Now we're going to move on because I want to talk a lot about technology and innovation because we know that is one of the keys to solving some of our biggest global issues right now. But the big question is where that innovation will come from. How do we nurture and develop smaller, innovative companies whilst also capitalizing on some of the resources and the scale of larger businesses? And the big question, of course, is what role does India play in all of this? So, to explain, please welcome the new Chief Executive of Niti Ayog, on stage in the UK for the first time. Please put your hands together for B.V.R. Subrahmanyam.
Good afternoon, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It's an honor and a pleasure to be with you, all of you here today. I thank my friend, the High Commissioner Vikram, to have coaxed and cajoled me to speaking to all of you today here. I was scheduled to speak to all of you tomorrow in any case. I'll be talking about infrastructure, and that's what brought me to London tomorrow. The Lord Mayor had invited me a couple of months ago, but since I was here, they used the opportunity. So I'll stick to my knitting, which is I'll be speaking about innovation and the role of innovation in handling global challenges and the role of India in doing this. It was fascinating to hear my earlier speakers. I mean, these are two nations with a fantastic relationship. I had my own small role last year and a half ago. I was the Commerce Secretary, and it was during my tenure that we managed to launch the trade negotiations for an FTA. And I'm happy to see the amount of interest that is there. Almost everybody was peppered with questions on the trade agreement and when it's going to fructify. But I'm confident there's a tremendous pool of support on both sides. And I think there are shared goals and visions between the two nations about striking this deal for shared prosperity. And I'm sure it's going to be a win-win for both nations and the people. So I wish the negotiators the best. These things are always very tricky, but I'm sure solutions can be found. There is a very high degree of agreement, strategic alignment at the top, and that will filter down to the bottom. Now, I've been asked to speak on what's the role of innovation in handling global challenges and what can India do in promoting innovation around the world. I work in Niti Ayog, which is the strategic think tank of Government of India. We are an organization which is supposed to look beyond the immediate future, out of the normal budgetary cycles, the 1 to 2 year future. We are actually looking at things 10 years down the road, 25 years down the road. And in Niti Ayog, we actually run what's called the Atal Innovation Mission, where we are actually trying to establish an innovation ecosystem in India. And that's very important, and I'll come to that in a minute, why that's very important. The world is being flooded with challenges. We have heard some of them. It's climate change, the onslaught of artificial intelligence. We don't know whether it's for the good of the world or the bad of the world. I mean, then there are people who are divided on both sides. We have aging populations. We have food, fuel, security. I think these are huge things. But I think in India, we are very, very convinced, right down the chain, from the top to the bottom, that it's going to be technology and innovation which are going to be the saviors in getting us over these challenges. I think it's almost an article of faith. But what does that article of faith actually mean? There are going to be large transformations in the future. There are many known unknowns about these transformations, but there are many unknown unknowns about these transformations. It's our job as government, as the private sector, as individuals, as academics, as institutions, actually, to see that these transformations are guided in directions that are more desirable for us. And I think that's a very, very difficult role. What does that mean? It means actually, as my previous speaker, the Honorable Leader of the Opposition, said, that we need to have discussions, we need to have debates. And I think that's the only way we can actually channelize innovation to our benefit as we go into the future, to nudge innovation in the directions we desire. And this innovation is not only about finding solutions, it's also about adjusting to these innovations. And adjusting to innovations means what? Innovations is not in science and technology. It would be innovation in business models. Innovations in institutions. Why do we need to innovate in institutions? Because the speed at which technology is changing is much faster than the speed at which governments react to these changes. So unless you actually recast and restructure institutions, you will not be able to handle these changes. I think these are large questions that we need to handle. And if you just look at the innovation landscape globally, there's been a dramatic transformation. Just 10 years ago, about in 2012, I mean, the United States was the center of all innovation in the world. I mean, 6 out of the top 10 innovation hubs were in the United States. Almost 2/3 of all seed capital and other venture capital funding was all in the United States. And London was, of course, almost a glorious exception, being the second best hub at that point of time. But in 10 years, there's been a huge transformation. Over $1.5 trillion of money has been put into new enterprises around the world. But more importantly, where are they? There are new hubs that are developing. There's Bangalore, there's Singapore, there's Seoul, there's Sydney. So there's a huge new ecosystem that's coming up. And that's actually driving innovation around the world. It's actually a matter to rejoice in. But what are the lessons to be learned from all of that? The lessons are that innovations are being tackled in newer and newer places. Every innovation is being handled or being tried to be addressed by somebody somewhere in some corner of the world. And the lesson from that is that we need to collaborate. Because the solution for something may require 10 innovations. 2 may be happening in the UK, 2 in India, 2 in some other country. I think there needs to be a global common platform where actually innovations can talk to each other so that collectively you find solutions to problems. Be it climate change or be it disaster management. Somebody is doing something on disaster forecasting, somebody actually does it in disaster management, and somebody does in rescue and relief. All of this has to be combined. You go sector after sector. I think what we need is global platforms where innovations can actually be brought together. And I actually see the UK and India relationship something which can be a base for the rest of the world. In the Global Innovation Index, the UK is 4th. India used to be 83rd, it's now 40th, and it's rising very, very fast. What you bring to the table is sophistication. What India brings to the table is scale. I think this is the kind of collaboration. We heard one example a little while ago. This is the example of the vaccine collaboration. Vaccine which was created in the United Kingdom, but brought to scale in India. I mean, those billions of vaccines which are produced in India wouldn't have happened if it was not for India. So I think this is where the germ of an India-UK relationship in innovation is sophistication on one side, scale on one side. And what's so attractive about India? People talk about economy. And by the way, this is the 75th year, just as it's the 75th year of the NHS, it's the 75th year of our independence. This is a country which is celebrating its 75th year, but looking forward to its 100th year, as we call it at home, Amrit Kal, the golden era. And this is a country which is thinking strategically, and it's the job of my institution to think strategically into the future. We're looking at a country which is going to be anywhere between $25 to $30 trillion in 2047. And that's something which is huge. And it's not going to happen by accident. It's going to happen because we are going to have determined, consistent policy making and openness to the rest of the world. And that was something very interesting. India is not only the largest investor, second largest investor in the UK. The total FDI of India into the US is more than US FDI into India. So, India is actually reasonably well integrated into the world. And that's the path this country will be going. But there are a couple of points why innovation is going to be very critical as far as India is concerned for the rest of the world. It's a very young nation. 720 million Indians are below 32 years of age. That's more than the population of the United States and Europe put together. This is where innovation is going to come up. But traditionally, our society has been risk averse. And that's why people go into traditional professions. People become doctors, nurses, lawyers, engineers, and you got a secure job. We need to create an ecosystem of innovation in India. And what's India doing? We are not lying idle. In my own organization, this Atal Innovation Mission, which is there, we're setting up tinkering labs. We call them Atal Tinkering Labs, ATLs, in schools. 10,000 schools have these labs. Over 6 million children are working with their hands on latest things and trying to find solution to problems. There are no examinations here. They first try to define a problem, then try to find a solution, a technological solution for the problem, and then actually try to make a business case of it. There are more than 1 million projects on which school children are working, and these are high school and higher secondary school children. This is a huge ecosystem. The plan is in the next couple of years, 600,000 schools in India will have these tinkering labs. You want to have millions of children actually develop a scientific temper and contribute to global innovation. Similarly, we've set up about 700 incubators across the public sector and private sector in higher educational institutions. These are incubators where a lot of activity is happening. And the results are there and we're having challenges. They're national challenges, state level challenges. On any given day, there is a hackathon happening in some part of India. So there's a huge ecosystem of innovation. And it's sometimes very, very exciting and challenging. You can go to Bangalore and you'll see the throb of innovation, and some of them are going to talk to you today, tomorrow here. It's unbelievable. You can sit on a table, have a dinner with 10 people, all of them are unicorns. Next day you can have another dinner and another bunch of 10 unicorns. So, don't even need to repeat people. But it's not just the unicorns. It's the mid-size, it's the small size, innovators. The fact that innovation and entrepreneurship has got into the Indian genes is something phenomenal. And I think that's going to be a big, big plus. I mean, last year, almost $40 billion was raised as seed funding by Indian startups. And that's a phenomenal figure. And I think as we go along, there are areas which we're already good at. It's fintech, it's agri-tech, it's biotech, it's e-commerce, it's business to customer, B2C transactions. A lot is happening on the innovation ecosystem as far as India is concerned. So this youth, and if you look at multinationals, people think India is all about IT, and then, you see TV serials about, the call center and the call center guy in India trying to imitate a good American or British accent. But it's no longer about call centers. We have what are called global capability centers. Over 2,000 multinationals run their R&D centers in India, over 2,000. That's actually what innovation for large MNCs is actually happening in India. I think that's something. The huge scale of engineering workforce and science and technology workforce that is there is actually feeding into other countries. But the good thing is, a lot of them are actually becoming entrepreneurs, and that's how innovation is coming up in India on a very, very large scale. It's happening in defense. I mean, about 20 startups are actually feeding our defense system with their products. So there's a huge demand, both in the domestic market as well as internationally, for the innovation that's coming up to India. How is India contributing to solving global challenges through innovation? A couple of things that the country has done. We are the chair of the G20 this year, and India has taken its chairmanship very, very seriously. You actually have to travel to India to see that G20 is no sideshow for a few diplomats. It's actually been taken to the heart of every individual sector of Indian society, and innovation is one of them. We have created an engagement group called Startup 20, where over 40 nations, and I'm counting EU as one, so if you add that, there's more than 65, who have collectively worked on coming out with a communique on startups. What should the world do to encourage innovation in startups? And they're going to come out with a communique. As a preview, I can say that they're calling for an investment of over $1 trillion by 2030 in startups, to create a global platform where innovators can actually meet and communicate. And just wait for a week or so, 3rd or 4th July, the startup event in Delhi will be over and the communique will be there. But I think that's India's contribution, creating a platform for innovators to collaborate across the world. So what will be my messages as I conclude? Number one, I think we need to trust innovation. We need to embrace change. And change means not just science and technology, but also change our institutions and our business models, because innovation is going to be disruptive. And I, as somebody in government, have to realize that this is absolutely essential. The second is cross-border collaborations are very, very essential. Countries have to enter into partnerships. In the UK government and the Indian government have a startup launch pad where UK startups explore Indian opportunities and Indian startups explore UK opportunities. We need to expand those. We need to have more of those. The third is look at the youthful, dynamic, entrepreneurial Indian population that is there. I mean, India is going to be the single biggest supplier of working age people for the next 30 years. Some people call it the demographic challenge. We call it the demographic dividend. A highly skilled, educated, competent workforce is going to be the growth engine of the world in innovation as well as in simple GDP terms. So with this, I conclude. Thank you very much for giving this opportunity. We'll be meeting some of you again tomorrow. Bye-bye.